No Rest for the Wicked is a Souls-light ARPG mashup from Moon Studios, the creators that brought you the Ori series. One thing I want to get settled right away is that this game is not a traditional Souls-like, nor is it a traditional Diablo-like ARPG. It takes elements from both to create, in my opinion, an insanely fun game. If you're a fan of Diablo-like ARPGs, this game does not have classes nor random generation for maps. It plays a lot more similarly to the Souls series, having stamina, dodging, and you have to commit to your attacks. There's no click to move. What it does take from ARPGs is randomized loot, crafting weapons, and slotting gems into items with tiers of gear and such. But if you're a Souls fan, this game is also not entirely like that either. That's why I referred to it as a Souls Light. There's about 10 hours of main content right now. If you only do one playthrough, you're probably going to get 10 to 15 hours. I've gotten about 50 out of it, and I've just been trying new builds, and I'm honestly just addicted to the game. It's so much fun. It is still in early access though, so don't expect too much content. I'm playing with a GTX 1080, 32 gigs of RAM, and on an SSD with an i5. I'm not on the minimum specs or the recommended specs for the game, but I'm kind of in the middle. Overall, I'd say the game ran okay. It has dips, stutters, and such, but overall not the worst, and it didn't ruin the experience for me. Some areas are a lot worse than others, so performance can depend on where you are. They have released some patches that did improve it actually a lot, so hopefully with time it will get better. Load times are hit or miss even with SSD, but I wanted to try it with a normal hard drive, and while it's not great. Overall gameplay performance is a little bit worse, not a big difference, but the way things are loaded in and the time is really bad. I really hope they can improve this at some point. I know games are moving towards SSDs, but it does make the game less accessible to people that don't have them, and like I said earlier, even load times on the SSD sometimes aren't that great, so fingers crossed. If you've seen any other reviews or seen people talk about this game, you probably heard them say that it looks like a moving painting, and honestly, it's 100% true. I believe this game to be one of the best looking games ever made. When amazing art direction and graphic fidelity meet, they create this. There are so many little details everywhere, all the nooks and crannies are packed full of personality, and the whole game just looks fantastic. Elemental effects like fire, ice, lightning, and plague all look great. Character designs are really fun and emotive. Areas are beautiful and always a joy to look at. Animations are so fluid and expressive, and the voice work is pretty good. The cutscenes, the ones that are, few and far between that are here, are really good. Armor designs are fantastic. I'm glad they took a little bit more of a historical approach to some of the armor and clothing, not having a shit ton of leather belts and bracers everywhere and no chainmail bikinis. They still have some more fantastical elements and armors, but they all fit the style very well. At the end of the day, I'm just glad they didn't do a generic fantasy and everything looks fantastic. Weapon designs are great as well. There's such a variety even in the same weapon categories, and all of them look and feel really nice. Sound work is super satisfying, weapons and impacts just sound amazing. For music in the game, there's not much. The only song that really comes to mind is the player housing song when you're in your house, which I really like. It's very calm, somber. It can help kind of wind you down after a big fight just to relax, Mostly the game is just ambience though, which I like quite a bit. Not having music all the time is kind of nice and kind of immerses me a little bit more. When you start the game, you get to make your character and choose your realm. There's no starting classes and you start with 10 points in each stat. Realms are interesting and kind of reminds me of something like Terraria, in the sense you can have multiple realms and have multiple characters, and those different characters can go between the different realms. It's really good for sharing items with your characters and allows you to run through the game again on the same character. Core combat is very much Souls. Just to reiterate, you have stamina, dodging, and weight classes. You have to commit to attacks and be strategic and thoughtful with each move. So very much a Souls-like combat system. The game also has checkpoints called Whispers that you revive at when you die. The ARPG elements are the random loot generation, crafting weapons, gear enchanting, and so on. Unlike Souls games, you don't lose XP on death, unless you have a piece of gear that makes that happen. Instead, you just earn XP and level up whenever it reaches its XP goal. Leveling up is similar to the Souls games in what the devs call a soft class system. Every level up you get 3 points to put into any of the stats, which allows custom classes to be made. Overall gameplay feels amazing, and it just flows super well. When it comes to the game's itemization, it also excels there. Affixes are super useful and never really vague, and you can usually feel the impact that your gear has on how you play. One thing I also really like about this game is that white gear is not useless. In a lot of ARPGs, white or common loot is usually just vendor trash, but white loot in No Rest for the Wicked is the most customizable loot. You're able to slot more gems and runes to it than blue and purple. Blue loot just has positive affixes, but purple loot is cursed, which means it usually has some really good bonuses, but one big negative, like losing gold on death or less health. The last tier of gear is Legendary. These are pretty similar to most ARPGs, being unique with special moves and affixes. I've only found a couple, but I've looked online and there's a surprising amount for early access. No Rest for the Wicked also does abilities in a really fun way. You can slot runes onto weapons, or the weapon can have runes already on them. And you get runes by either buying them or taking them off weapons, destroying the weapon in the process. To use them, you have to use Focus. Focus is gained mainly by attacking, but different gems and items can give it to you in different ways. Then when you build up enough, you can use the ability. These abilities can range from giant lightning explosions, dodge attacks, throwing your weapon and calling it back, and so much more. It's really fun to play as a mage in this game because you're actively having to go in and deal some damage to then go back out and cast some spells. It has a really nice ebb and flow to it. Bosses are really fun. There's only about 4 as of right now, but they were all really fun to fight. The map is super fun to explore, so many shortcuts, hidden paths, even some platforming every once in a while, and the areas are so vertical, which I love. Honestly, map design is just great and really fun to play in. Unlike Souls games, enemies don't respawn when you die. Instead, they have what they call the Alive system. After some time after clearing an area, it'll put new enemies around, spawn more chests, and even change the map itself, which incentivizes going through them again. The endgame content for now is the Crucible, a pseudo-roguelike dungeon mode. It's fun for a little bit, but it lacks variety as of right now. It's always the same 10 rooms with next to no differences besides slightly different enemy placements. I'd recommend 2 things I'd like to see in the future for the Crucible. Obviously more rooms, but also more variations to the rooms, but some different enemy types as well. Different fortifications, and have some room variations, maybe changing paths, adding some traps, maybe some platforming things, just to break up the similarity. But it's still really fun for a bit. No Rest for the Wicked also has a town building aspect to it, allowing you to upgrade various vendors and fix paths around Sacrament by collecting materials around the world of Sacra. When you upgrade buildings, they take real time, like 1 to 4 hours, but they keep going even when the game is off, and I personally think it's a really neat feature. Sacrament also offers housing for players. You can use these for storage and crafting, but can also be decorated with an assortment of different items. You mainly get things for your house by either making them or buying them, but overall a fun mechanic. The game's UI is pretty good. You can change some settings to show damage numbers and posture bars, and the whole UI is just very nice to look at. For story, there's not much out at the moment, but what's here seems very promising. Cutscenes are great, and characters have a good amount of emotion to them. The game is kinda buggy. I ran into one game-breaking glitch that made it so I couldn't progress further in the game, but they did end up fixing it a day later. But most of the bugs I've run across were just funny things like enemies' weapons growing bigger after death, and my character's beard popping through his helmet. For things I'd like to see in the future, I want a buyback system for vendors, so just in case I accidentally sell my legendary or something, I can get it back. Rune descriptions would be nice, knowing what a rune will do before I put it on a weapon or destroy a weapon to get it. I know they plan on adding more specialized affixes because of this one tweet by one of the main people at Moon Studios, so those will be fun. I'd really like to see summons being able to do a necromancer build or something, because I just really like summons in ARPGs. For weapons, I want added flails are definitely one of them, one-handed and two-handed crossbows. For the two-handed crossbows, I think it'd be cool to have some with bayonets on them, and for normal crossbows, you can just swing them around and beat people up with them. I just think they'd be really cool. And lastly, I want some sort of charm or talisman for faith builds so they have more unique spell casting, and even special runes for them as well, because right now faith is not that different just from a normal melee build. I honestly love this game, and I can't stop playing. I already have around 50 hours in the game, and I've beaten what's available of the game 4 times. When this game fully releases, it could possibly be with my top 3 games of all time. It's really that fun. But just know going into it that it's a very promising IOU. They have a roadmap showing the next updates. The next one will be multiplayer with up to 4 players, and after that a bigger content update. I honestly just love this game, and I can't wait to talk about it again at the full release.